At the beginning of the story, we can see a man and woman fighting. Meanwhile, their daughter is mentally going through it, and soon we can see the man is leaving them behind, even though their daughter was crying brutally and wanted her father to stay. We can finally see that it is not other than Tessa herself, and we can see her father came back into her life after 10 years of absence. He is homeless and still somewhat alcoholic. They finally give him a makeover, and we can see Tessa telling him to stay if needed, while having dinner. Meanwhile, Hardin was worried that Tessa's father was still the same person, and he will again leave her, just like he did in her childhood. Hardin offers him some money and asks him to leave, but the father refuses his offer, saying he is more interested in spending time with her daughter than anything. Her father asked Hardin to trust him for once. One day, we can see Tessa talking to her friend Landon that she was going to Seattle for the job she was offered, which was her dream job. Suddenly, Hardin arrives on the spot, and she hesitantly reveals to him about moving to Seattle. However, Hardin wanted to move to London with her. Hardin was left devastated when she leaves for her class. We can see Hardin coming back to his house and seeing Tessa's dad with suspicion, and gives him a ride to a local bar. There her father insists him to come and join, and he nervously does. They start drinking there back to back, where Hardin shows him a picture of Tessa, and they talk a little about her. Suddenly, a random man arrives and teases Tessa's father after seeing Tessa's picture in his phone. Her father could not control himself, and both Hardin and him started to punch him brutally. Tessa also arrives there after the bartender called her, and they flee from the spot since the cops were coming. It was clear the relationship between Hardin and her father was getting better. After putting her father to sleep, she talks to Hardin about the incident while calling them both alcoholics. Then things started to take a different turn. Hardin puts an ice cube on Tessa's body and slowly started to kiss her legs. Meanwhile, she was feel on top of the world, and the inevitable happens between them for the rest of the night. Next morning, Tessa's father leaves on the spot after she gives him her number. Not too long after, an argument ensues between Tessa and Hardin because Tessa was moving to Seattle, which was against Hardin's will. This makes both of them very upset, and Tessa can be seen looking at Hardin's book and thinking of all the lovely memories they spent together. Following morning, Tessa arrives at her office and meets with her boss's wife, who reveals to her that Vance offered Hardin a job, but he refused to take it. A little about Vance: he is Hardin's uncle and Hardin's father's friend, who is pretty close to him. This was cherry on the top for Tessa, and she gets even more disappointed at Hardin. Later they meet up and talk about this. However, Hardin explains himself to her, and they decide to have a great time at weekend, even though Tessa was still sad due to Hardin keeping secrets from her. In a few days, both Hardin and Tessa can be seen sitting along with Hardin's family and having the time of their life and a wonderful vacation. There, Tessa asks Landon some suggestions if going to Seattle was the best decision to make, or if she perhaps take a leap of faith and move to London with Hardin after graduation. Landon straight up suggests Tessa to focus on herself because Hardin could always follow her if the love is true. Right after, she sits along with Hardin and cherish the lovely moments. It was clear both were going to miss each other a lot. We are moved to the next scene. Hardin and Tessa come into a restaurant where Hardin meets an old friend called Lily and decide to talk to her for a bit, while Tessa felt very uncomfortable about it. Tessa was looking back and forth at Hardin and Jalousi, where Hardin also encounters something odd about the waiter, who seemed talking to her in an unusual way, which result in Hardin hitting him on his way. Same night, Tessa and Hardin were enjoying jacuzzi at Hardin's father's house. There Hardin and Tessa start doing the obvious and felt the love in each other's heart. It was all happening while they were still inside the warm water, and they are done after some moments of ecstasy. Soon, Hardin asks if she had feelings for the waiter, to which she almost speaks something that Hardin really disliked and walks away immediately. Tessa tried to text Hardin and gets to know he was hanging out with Lily, which makes her think for a bit, and texts Landon to have a drink with her. On her way she meets the same guy Robert right outside the restaurant, and while they talk, she gets to know Robert live in New York. For some reason Robert was showing her interest. Suddenly, Hardin comes and acts weirdly in front of Robert and asks Tessa to leave along with him. It is also revealed that Hardin was lying about hanging out with her friend Lily. Upon things heating up, Robert leaves the scene followed by Tessa. He gives her his number in case she ever travels to New York. Next day, she sees Hardin was looking pissed due to last night's incident, and what's even more interesting is that he found a Robert's number slip, which made him even angrier. He also suggests the reason for her to get the job itself was because he was the one to recommend her to Vance Publishing, which made Tessa a bit emotional. Hardin seems to trust Tessa, but no one else. It was evident that he was scared to lose her, since she was the one to change his whole life around. We can see Tessa is packing her bags, while Hardin is talking to Vance himself, who again offers him a job. However, Hardin didn't want any favors anymore. Upon arriving back to his house, he calls for Tessa Rapidity, but there was nobody present, just the emptiness. This makes Hardin almost cry. He also finds a notebook written by Tessa and began to read it, and gets even more emotional thinking about her. Soon things were going to take an interesting turn for both of them. Tessa finally reaches Seattle and is welcomed by Vance and her wife, but she was feeling devastated. Next morning she wakes up and checks her phone, but no text from Hardin. Even while working she would check her phone time to time, but no text arrives from Hardin, as if he did not exist anymore. Suddenly, a text arrives, but it wasn't Hardin's. She could not resist herself anymore and decide to call Hardin herself. Hardin answers the call, and she cuts the call upon hearing a voice of a woman in the background, but later gets to know it was Hardin's gym coach. They talk for a minute, where Hardin gave away some positive vibes about everything until he is called by his coach. Tessa's work and school life was going pretty well. One day after talking to Vance and his wife, she leaves for her bedroom and calls Hardin. Not so soon after, they both started to experience something intense through phone and enjoyed everything passionately. Both were missing each other and tells each other that they love one another a lot. Soon we can see Hardin was having the worst dream ever. He saw Robert having intense moments with Tessa, and suddenly he wakes up. We can see Hardin arriving at Vance's place to meet Tessa, which makes her really excited. Both goes back into her room, where he returned her notebook back to her, and also nervously apologized for his previous actions. Vance's wife Kimberly called them outside, but Tessa stopped Hardin to have some romantic moments. Suddenly, he again gets the flashback of his worst nightmare, and backs off and walks outside. Meanwhile, Kimberly also assures her that everything will work out in the end, and makes Tessa feel better. Hardin was still behaving all silent and mysterious in front of Tessa, but she was confused about everything. Same night, Hardin leaves from her bed and pursues boxing to relieve his stress. However, Tessa arrives there to talk about it. Hardin suggests her to be with someone else to make her life easier, and finally reveals about his nightmares, to which she assures Hardin that he is the only one she will ever want. Soon, intense romantic moments happens between them, which lasts quite a while. We can see them both waking up in the morning truly happy. They finally decide to hang out in Seattle and spend lots of lovely and memorable moments. However, at night Tessa could not sleep, thinking Hardin will leave soon. She asks Hardin about not revealing about her mother's wedding, about which she got to know from Kimberly earlier. Hardin tells her that the reason for not telling her the truth was because he did not want to go in the wedding himself. Soon he leaves after kissing her. Hardin arrives at his house and finds his door open. Upon looking around a bit with a bat in his hands, he finds out Tessa's father sitting injured on the bathroom floor. He reveals how he owed someone $500, so Hardin comes back with an expensive watch and gives it away to him. Meanwhile, Tessa was getting diagnosed with a condition in which she might never be able to get pregnant, which is a woman's worst nightmare. Hardin meets his father to be able to transfer his classes to Seattle, to be able to live with the love of his life, Tessa, but his father suggests to complete the graduation here, which is just 2 more months. Hardin also arrives at Vance's event and surprises Tessa. He also reveals to her about moving into Seattle after 2 months, which makes her feel like the luckiest woman alive. Next morning, Hardin arrives into Vance's gym and finds him practicing, where he suggests him to take Tessa to her mother's wedding, because that might be a great moment for both of them. Hardin comes to Tessa and reveals to her that he booked 2 tickets to London, and soon we can see them arriving at her mother's wedding. Hardin gets a call from Tessa's father, and she notices him talking, and says thanks to him for everything he was doing for her and her family. Tessa helps her mother choose a beautiful dress, while Hardin spends some time alone. At night they have some close moments. In the middle of the night Hardin wakes up to drink some water, but he was about to encounter something he could have never imagined. He hears a huffing sound and walks into the kitchen, He sees his mother was having some intense moments with Vance, which makes Hardin rage a lot, and he ends up hitting Vance back to back until Tessa calms him down. This was too much for Hardin to handle, and later he hugs Tessa while crying as if he was a little child. Finally, Hardin's mother's and Mike's wedding happens, and Hardin was sitting angry along with Tessa. Later on, Vance tries to talk to frustrated Hardin and ask him to meet up and talk at the bar nearby, to which Hardin hesitantly agrees. Hardin goes to talk to Vance, while Tessa walks beside Vance's wife Kimberly to comfort her. Hardin walks into the bar and slowly sits along with Vance, where Vance nervously started to explain himself a truth that was going to change Hardin's whole life around. At first he hesitates a bit, but finally reveals that Hardin is his son, which makes Hardin break into pieces. Not only this, but Kimberly also tells this to Tessa. Hardin and Tessa walks towards each other and kiss each other with pure love, and the story continues. To watch the next part of this series, make sure to subscribe my YouTube channel Wish Recaps. Thank you so much and have a good day.